Once upon a time, there were two monks who were traveling together. One was an older monk, and the other was a young novice. As they were walking along a path, they came across a rushing river. On the bank of the river, they saw a young woman who was stranded and unable to cross. Without hesitation, the older monk picked up the woman and carried her across the river on his back. The young novice was surprised by his companion's actions, as it was against their monastic code to touch a woman. Nevertheless, the two monks continued on their journey. For several hours, the young novice was unable to get the image of the older monk carrying the woman out of his head. Finally, he could not hold it in any longer and spoke up, "Master, how could you carry that woman across the river? It goes against our vows." The older monk replied, "My dear young friend, I put that woman down on the other side of the river, but you are still carrying her in your mind." The young novice was stunned by his teacher's words. He realized that he had been clinging onto the past and holding onto his judgment of the older monk's actions. He had not let go of the woman, even though she was no longer physically present. From that day on, the young novice learned to let go of his judgments and attachments. He understood that clinging onto the past or holding onto grudges only caused suffering. He learned to live in the present moment and to let go of any thoughts that did not serve him. Years later, the young novice became an older monk himself and was traveling with his own student. They came across the same river where the two monks had encountered the woman many years before. As they were crossing the river, the older monk turned to his student and said, "Do you remember the story of the two monks and the woman?" The student replied, "Yes, master." The older monk carried the woman across the river, and the younger monk could not let go of his judgment. The older monk smiled and said, "That is correct. But there is one more lesson to be learned from that story." The student looked at his teacher inquisitively. The older monk continued, "The woman was stranded on the other side of the river, and I carried her across so that she could continue on her journey. The younger monk carried her in his mind for hours, causing himself unnecessary suffering. But both of us had to let go of the woman at some point. You see, the woman was impermanent, just like everything else in life. We cannot hold on to anything forever." The student nodded in understanding, realizing that the lesson was not just about letting go of judgments and attachments but also about embracing the impermanence of life. From that day on, the student understood the true meaning of the Zen story of the two monks and the woman. He learned to let go of judgments, attachments, and the illusion of permanence. He embraced the impermanence of life and lived in the present moment, just as his teacher had taught him. This story teaches us several lessons about mindfulness, non-judgment, and impermanence. The first lesson is that we should let go of our judgments and attachments to the past because they can cause us unnecessary suffering. The second lesson is that we should live in the present moment and let go of any thoughts that do not serve us. The third lesson is that everything in life is impermanent, and we should embrace this truth instead of resisting it. Finally, the story teaches us that the true purpose of mindfulness practice is not just to let go of judgments and attachments but also to embrace the impermanence of life. Thank you for watching. May you have peace and prosperity, and may all your wishes come true.